Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is David Novak. I have been reading A Boy's Own Story by Edmund White. This is not a very good cover, I think. And I did, in my last video, I read a little bit from the opening and enthused about the book. I was quite pleased with the opening scene featuring the boy and his father and another set of people. And it's really marvelous. And the book has gone on in sort of a disjointed fashion, relating the narrator's growing up, his young life, as he discovers his own sexuality, I guess. I mean, that would be the running theme here. It is called an autobiographical novel, and it says here even a novel. I don't know if you can see that, a novel. But to me, it reads absolutely like a memoir. And I'm not particularly fond of memoirs, but I do enjoy them once in a while, I should say. And I wonder sometimes what is most art but memoir. I mean, lately I had been reading poems by Hans Schahn, and it's not clear exactly who the author is, possibly more than one person, but certainly they are autobiographical in some respect. And we don't fault anybody that. I suppose when it comes to this kind of thing, I think of Rudyard Kipling, who said something to the effect that of all the lives that there are, the most boring lives of all are the lives of writers. And you would expect that, I think. And this, I'm still reading it. I have gotten to page 127. So I've got $70 pages yet to go, and that should not be an issue for me. I do intend to finish the book. It's light reading enough. It's not like the Francis Parkman I had been reading, where to finish it requires something of a marathon effort. I have fallen out of reading. I read Hemingway and a couple of other novels last month or the month before, and then I've fallen into, I got back to Parkman a little and let it go. And the other plans that I began the year with of Chinese history and archaeology, I've let that go. But this came in at the library, and so I started it. And after that beginning, though, it's grown a little tedious. For one thing, the life that he describes is a fairly affluent life. I mean, I can relate to some aspects of the life he presents. The world that I grew up in was not that much different than his world, although we did not have servants, and we did not have culture. My parents stayed together. But there are superficial consonances that I can relate to. I should see what year he was born, if I can see it. Well, it doesn't say, does it? That would help. He died recently. Well, I'm not going to look it up. But I thought, lest I leave you or you who watched my last video with a mistaken impression, wherein I enthused about the book, I have to report that my enthusiasm for the book has waned considerably, I would say. It's still enjoyable as writing, but I'll read a little bit. He talks about his first date, and I'm not going to relate the whole scene. Helen Paper had a wide, regal forehead, straight, dark hair pulled back from her face, curiously narrow hips, and strong, thin legs. She was famous for the great globes of her breasts, as evident as her smile and almost as easy to acknowledge, and so heavy that her shoulders had become very strong. How her breasts hung naturally, I had no way of knowing, since in her surgically sturdy brassiere, her form had been idealized into, well, two uncannily symmetrical globes, at once proud, inviting, and, by virtue of their symmetry, respectable. But to describe her without mentioning her face would be absurd, since everyone was dazzled by those fine blue eyes, harder or perhaps less informative than one would have anticipated, and by that nose, so straight and classical, joined to the forehead without a bump or transition of any sort. The nose, a prayer ascending above the altar of lips so rich and sweet that one could understand how men had once regarded women as spoils in wars worth fighting. She was a woman, for she surely seemed a woman despite her youth, supremely confident of her own appeal, her status as someone desirable in the abstract, that is, attractive and practicable to anyone under any conditions at any time, rather than in the concrete, to me now as mine. She wasn't shy or passive, but to the extent she was a vessel, she was full to the brim with the knowledge that she represented a prize. She was the custodian of her own beauty. So all that was very interesting and really very beautiful writing, I think. You might even say magisterial writing. But the whole paragraph of describing Helen's appearance, the description, it's where my interest falls off. Because no matter how beautifully written it is, no matter how intrinsically interesting each detail is as he reports it, still the whole description of this girl or young woman that he knew, it leaves me cold. It's not something I really care to know about. I don't need to know what she looked like. It was important to him. And here I'm treating it as memoir. So let me read a little bit of the paragraph after the date. Oh no, this is about the date. I think there was a paragraph after the date that I was thinking of. Well, I read this earlier today and I'm not quite sure I picked out the right passages to read, but our date was quick, unremarkable. It's the particular curse of adolescence that its events are never adequate to the feelings they inspire, that no unadorned retelling of those events can suggest the feelings. Tommy's mother collected us all in her car. We were still too young to drive, and deposited us at the theater. Green spotlights buried in fake ferns in the lobby played on a marble fountain that had long since been drained. The basin was filled with candy wrappers and paper napkins. Inside, behind padded doors, each pierced by a grimy porthole, soared the dark splendors of the theater, brushed here and there by the ushers' traveling red flashlights, or feebly, briefly dispelled by the glow of a match held to a forbidden cigarette. The ceiling had been designed to resemble the night sky. The stars were minute bulbs, the moon a yellow crescent. To either side of the screen was a wind-swept version of a royal box, a gilt throne on a small carpeted dais under a great blown-back stucco curtain topped by a papier-mâché coronet. So that's a description of a movie theater, and I remember movie theaters like that from my youth. I think in Chicago we still have the Music Box Theater, which is a refurbished grand old theater. I have not gone there in years, but that ceiling with the artificial stars and all of the details are reminiscent of things that I remember. So they touch on experience that I can relate to. But as a paragraph in a so-called novel or even memoir, it's just not of that much relevance to me or importance. I don't really care. So let's move on to after the movie. and I have my own first date memories, which this brought these long buried memories to light for me, which I have not dwelt upon. After the movie, we went somewhere for a snack, and then I walked Helen home. Her beauty stood between us like an enemy, some sort of hereditary enemy I was supposed to fear, but I liked her well enough. Even the fiercest lovers must like each other at least once in a while. The trees arching above the deserted suburban streets tracked slowly past overhead, their crowns dark against a hazy white night sky, clouds lit up like internal organs died for examination, for augury. I spoke quietly, deliberately, to Helen Paper, and I snatched glances of her famous smile rising to greet my words. Our attention wasn't given over to words, but to the formal charting of that night street that we were executing. I mean we, or rather our bodies, the animal sense in us, some orienting device. We were discovering each other, and for one moment I felt exultantly worthy of her. For she did have the power to make me seem interesting, at least to myself. I found myself talking faster and with more confidence as we approached the wide, dimly lit porch of her house. Some late roses perfumed the night. A sprinkler someone had left on by mistake played back and forth over the grass. A sudden breeze snatched up the spray and flung it on the walkway ahead, a momentary darkening of the white pavement. Inside, upstairs, a room was just barely lit behind a drawn curtain. Crickets took the night's pulse. So that scene is vividly realized. And the writing is impeccable. It's interesting. But to my feeling, it's a bit much. Whenever he gives a metaphor, it's always perfect. And it's generally an unexpected metaphor as well. The trees arching above the deserted suburban streets tracked slowly past overhead, their crowns dark against a hazy white night sky. Clouds lit up like internal organs died for examination, for augury. A very, very good metaphor. Of course, it recalls T.S. Eliot's patient etherized upon a table. And Eliot's is better, to be sure. But for me, it is as though all of this fine, exquisite even, writing is being held to a rather pedestrian purpose. He is describing a mundane scene. And what so thrilled me in that first part, I think I talked about the lamplight or the flashlight caressing the stones, something like that. And there was another one of that sort that I called attention to. When it comes to the last sentence here, crickets took the night's pulse. It's the same sort of thing as the same sort of stretching the words, extending the words, brilliantly, I think, but I guess I've grown a little tired of it because, as I say, he's describing a fairly pedestrian scene and not bringing any particular insight into it. You would think the man writing many years after would have some thoughts, etc., but he does not. So I will leave that off, but the affluence of the narrator is a off-putting aspect to the book. And I realize the other memoir that I recall reading years back, unexpectedly, that I liked very much was Maxim Gorky. And he describes a life of poverty. And this is a little bit shorter, I think. Oh no, it's a little bit longer. It's 232 pages, up 234 pages, as opposed to White's 197 or something like that. Yeah, 196. But I remember just Well, I said this was disjointed. There is no real clear through line to the story. There are flashbacks and glances forward, and you never really consistently follow any characters in any kind of an arc. So that opening scene with the father is very good, but it's not as though the father becomes a character who we follow. Yeah, like in Cheaper by the Dozen, which I read last year or the year before, the story of the Gilbreth family and that odious father. He presents a loving portrait of his father, but let me just read you the opening to My Childhood. Father lay on the floor by the window of a small, darkened room, dressed in white and looking terribly long. His feet were bare and his toes were strangely splayed out. His gentle fingers, now peacefully resting on his chest, were also distorted, and the black discs of copper coins firmly sealed his once shining eyes. His kind face had darkened, and its nastily bared teeth frightened me. Mother, half naked in a red skirt, was kneeling beside him, combing his long, soft hair down from the forehead to the nape of his neck with the black comb I loved to use as a saw for melon rinds. She kept muttering something in a hoarse, deep voice. Her gray eyes were swollen and seemed to be dissolving in a flood of tears. Already he presents a much more immediate scene, than anything I've encountered so far in this. I don't remember this book in detail at all, but it has got me to thinking that when I finish this book, I may well go for Gorky's second book, My Universities, I think is the second title, which I have somewhere in a mass market paperback. Oh no, I think, okay. In 1921, he went to Italy, where he wrote My Universities, the third part of his great autobiographical trilogy. The other parts are My Childhood and My Apprenticeship. So My Apprenticeship should be the second one, and I'm not sure if I have that. I should look that up. And if I don't, I should see if there's a copy available to me, maybe even just get one from the library. Because I've long thought about continuing on with Gorky. His is in the three parts. Edmund White's is also in three parts, and this tripartite structure of memoir or autobiographical novel seems to be pretty common. I've had long on my list this by J.M. Coetzee, and this is three separate books: Boyhood, Youth, and Summertime, here presented in one volume. And I've heard very good things about it. So I am not quite sure. I will continue on with this. I don't think Penguin, this is a Penguin book, I don't think Penguin informs you what the other two titles in this this autobiographical sequence are. But at this point, it is unlikely that I will continue with Edmund White. I hope to finish this, but then we will see. I may move into Gorky. So to dispel any wrong impression that I may have left with my last video, in which I was very enthusiastic, I still like Edmund White's writing very much. I think it's very fine craftsmanship. very fine sentencing, if you will. But the overarching purpose of it seems rather dissipatory. So I will leave off there. Thank you for stopping by my channel.